Okay, so it is week 7 already, and I just want to make an announcement. So next week, because it is spring break, I am going actually to do this class online. So if you are from somewhere and you want to join in, you can. If not, I'm going to record it because it kind of conflicts with other classes that I had in the end of the semester. So I want to be on time. So I send you a message and I send you a link online already with the Zoom. So if you are around and you feel like taking a break from your family and just gonna go into the Zoom link, you have a Zoom link over there on Blackboard. And if not, I'm just gonna have the recording and it's gonna be okay. After spring break in week 9, just gonna come in and tell you everything about the testing and how to sign up for the practice test. I'm gonna bring some practice tests to the class on week 10, and you can come with all kind of question and answers and all kind of stuff that we have. But 90% of the good stuff we already did. What we have to do today is we have to finish the stuff with masking, and basically the rest of the stuff, it's going to be easy breezy and easier stuff kind of like to work with. So what we're going to do today, we are going to go just to effects, and we're going to go back to our area that you have, and we're going to have to go back here to the opacity mask and see the difference between that. Some questions about it in the test, not so much. You're going to have a lot of questions about masking, and remember we worked with masking last week, and I told you a few other things we're going to go and have to work and see the difference between opacity mask and clipping mask. What is the difference between them? And most of the time they're going to ask you in the test what is the difference between that. So let's look and see what is the difference between the two of them. File and open, and then we can go actually to week 6, and in week 6 you have a folder that says opacity mask. We still have a folder that says masks. So in the area of the mask, you're going to have, say, images for masking and masking. But I'm going to go back to opacity mask. And what we're going to do here, I'm going to click at the one that says opacity mask demo. Not a lot of people using opacity mask in Illustrator because they are kind of scared of it. But I asked you, I think last week, if you're using Photoshop. How many of you are using Photoshop? Not really. So if you're using Photoshop, basically opacity mask is a layer mask, and then clipping is a clipping. So let's look at the difference between them and how it works. So I'm going to just do a little demo here first, and then I'm going to look at the stuff that we have. So I'm going to look at the first page here, and then look at the layers panel. And then says blending all the way down in the layers panel because I put stuff in each area. So I'm going to take away the other areas over here, and I'm going to go into the place that says blending. And let's see what we have over there. We have a path on top of it, and then the blending mode, the opacity is 31, and then the blending mode is difference. If I'm going to change the blending mode to normal, and I put the opacity to 100, basically you're going to tell me what you see here. I just put a circle on top of the stuff. Then I have another image below, and if I'm looking at the image here, I'm going to look again, normal mode, and I have another image over here which is a normal mode, and it is a normal mode. So let's say I want to do stuff with it. I'm going to go into the circle, and I'm going to go back in, and just let's say we'll practice this a little bit. So I'm going to put this one over here. So let's say you are in the test right now, and then purposely I'm just going to make it kind of the same size, and that's what you're going to get. So you're going to have like one layer, not the other layers, and maybe they're going to go in and name it differently, and they're going to tell you to each one to do something, right? So that's going to be talking about opacity over here. So maybe they're going to tell you make the path So you're going to select this path and make the opacity level, let's say, to 30, and then the blending mode you're going to make to multiply. And that's already going to be the question for that. That could be some of the question they're going to do in the test. I'm going to take this one off. They might do the same thing with image 1 and it's on top of another one. They might tell you just change the blending mode, let's say, to difference. And basically this is what you're going to get, right? Simple stuff like that, and you're going to do. So that's stuff that we did actually last week. It's a little review, so you know that every image, even a Photoshop image or a vector that you have, can have a blending mode and can have opacity. But really what you need to do is really select it, because look what happened. If I don't click on it to select it physically, nothing is going to happen. So let's say I'm going to have opacity 100%, and then I'm going to change it to normal mode. Of course it is there. So here you have to really click, and they might have names from it, and the names might look a little bit similar, like they're going to call it circle 1, blue circle, blue light circle. So you have to pay attention. But I'm going to go in and turn that off, and then go back here to the regular area that says mask. So this is what we did last week. What we did over here is we just went in here and put some images in there. So do you guys remember what it is? It becomes like something, they call it a clip group. And inside the clip group, you can see here the word over here. So let's say all the way down, the clip group is the word Illustrator. And then I can still change the word Illustrator to another one. And inside, you do have other stuff that you have. So that could be another question that you're going to have. They're going to ask you to do a clipping mask to two things that you have. And I'm going to bring some project here in the end, and I'm going to tell you this is what you have, that's what you have to do. I actually prepared a few things that for the last week of the class with the practice test, but I made some kind of files that kind of look like the test, and I'll tell you where shall I click, and that's what you should do. Simple stuff. But now I'm going to click on the opacity mask, and let's look at the difference between them. So what is it, opacity mask? Opacity mask is something a little bit different, and you can play with opacity mask inside a clipping mask as well. So I'm just going to select, I'm going to go into the opacity mask, I'm going to select this selection, and I'm going to delete that. Just we have it just in front of us, and we're going to go in and create it ourselves. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and I'm going to make a rectangle on the screen. So I'm going to click and drag and make a rectangle. And why is this rectangle brown? Because maybe the last time I used something, it was brown. So I'm just going to check it out. I'm going to see if it is. Oh, I'm not recording it. Let me make sure that I'm recording it. I think I recorded it, right? Okay, let me make sure I'm recording it. Oh, I did record it, actually. What am I talking about? Okay, so now I'm going to go back here to Illustrator, and look what I'm going to go and see over here. And I'm going to go back here and just check it out. And then I'm going to make sure that I have the recording on. Okay. So anyway, so I'm going to go back and put it in here. And now what I have, just a rectangle. I'm going to go and place inside the rectangle something else. So I'm going to do File and Place. And I'm going to go back to the area that I have week 6, and I have mask, and I have stuff that says images for masking, and I'm going to click and get, let's say, image 0050 PSD, and I'm just going to go and put it on top of that. And it's not actually the right size, so I'm just going to make it up and just stretch it, which is not nice, but I'm stretching it. So look what happens right now, and I want you to see my layers panel. So I'm going to do panel option, and I'm going to make it really larger, and let's look what I have over here. I do have an image that I want in there. So you see an image on top, and underneath there is a rectangle. So if I wanted to go in and mask this image into the rectangle has to be on top, because when you do a clipping, basically the image has to go in and be on top of the area. But for this one, look what I'm doing. I'm going to select the top image. And then I am going to go to Window, and I'm going to go to the Transparency panel. I like to work with the Transparency panel when I work with Opacity Mask, because if you go in from the menu bar, it's a lot harder. So look what I have over here. It tells you it's normal, and then all the way over here it tells you you can make mask. Do you see that? Click on Make Mask, and look what happened right away. The mask is filled with black. Black in masking in Photoshop and in Illustrator is concealing. So what does it mean? It's covering whatever the image that has on top. So what did it cover? The little image that I brought in. And what do I see? The image below. If I'm going to say unclip, now what do you see? They have a white mask inside. So you can tell it by default that you never want to be clipped. So now it's never going to be clipped. I went over here and I say I don't want it to be clipped at all. So when it's white, you see the image in front of you. What can you do now? Let's go into a simple, let's say, ellipse. And then click inside, and then what you want to be is oops. You want to be on the mask. Do you see where I am? That's crucial. Look at the layers panel where I'm on the mask. What do you see? Is it say opacity mask? You don't see the layers all of a sudden. You say, whoa, I don't have the layers. Because they just see the opacity. If I click on the image, look what the image showing me. The two things that I have in this layer. Does that make sense? So I'm clicking on the opacity mask. Now I'm going to go to a circle. I'm going to fill the circle with black. What do you see? Why do you see the image underneath it? What is black doing? Black is concealing what you have in front of you, and that's where you see all of a sudden the image below. Does that make sense? So if I open now the layers panel in the opacity mask, that's what I have. If I'm going to go to the image and I'm going to turn off the bottom rectangle, what is this? That's not white. What is it? Transparent. If I'm going to go in and show transparency grid, it just cuts a hole. So the black actually covers what you have in front of you. I'm going to go back and put this one in and go to view and high transparency grid. I'm going to go in back to the mask. I'm going to select that and I'm going to make that white. White is revealing, so that's why you see the same thing. So now go and choose any color in between, as long as it's not either black or white. Maybe like dark red. And it says it's dark red, but what is it? They will calculate it as a gray scale. So it's not really red, it is some kind of grayish that goes in there. What if I put in some kind of a gradient? So I have a gradient that says fade to black. Look what happens over here, and you see everything is fading to black. Does that make sense? So basically what you can do there, you can actually cut Photoshop images with the mask, and it's going to be non-destructive. What does it mean? If I hold on the shift key on the mask, I turn off the mask. If I don't want it, I'm going to delete the mask. Now look what I want to show. I want to show in my transition that this image, that it's a Photoshop image, gonna have a smooth transition into the background color. So I'm gonna go into the mask. In this case, I'm gonna go to a rectangle, and I'm gonna do a rectangle exactly with the size of the image. And now I'm gonna go to my gradient, and then instead of going it from one side to the other, I'm basically gonna go in and then rotate my gradient. So look what I'm doing right now. I'm basically going in and rotating my gradient. And what does it tell me over here when I'm rotating the gradient? I might even go in and move it from one place to another. And I'm gonna click here and move it down. And I click here and move it down. So look what happens. Why do I have this smooth transition? Because if you go to the mask and you Option or Alt click on the mask, that's what I have in there. The white, what is the white doing? Revealing what I have in front of you. What is the transition is doing? Semi. And then what is the black is concealing. Does that make sense? And now all of a sudden, I can have something that kind of looks like that. And then it looks like I made a transition on the image that I have. Does that make sense? So opacity mask works with kind of transition of opacity that you create to it. When you're looking at your layers panel, look at the opacity mask. It says image 0050. Do you see dotted line next to it? That tells you this is an opacity mask to this image automatically. Does that make sense? And then how do you see it? Then you're going to go back here to the image itself. Now you see in the layer. Then you go to the mask, you see the mask. If I'm going to go back and say release the mask, basically what it does is bringing you 3 layers, one on top of each other. Does that make sense? So let's look at the difference between opacity mask and clipping, because that's what they're going to ask you. And for this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually close this one. I don't need this image. We're going to go and open a new image. So we're going to go in File and New. And let's open 8.5 by 11 and open one image. One artboard. And then we're going to go here and we're going to do few exercises to see. I'm going to do an ellipse. And I'm going to go to this ellipse and I'm going to fill the ellipse, let's say, with green. And in this case, I'm going to have it no stroke. And I'm going to duplicate it. So I have 2 ellipses. They are the same. One of them is going to be as a clipping, and one of them we're going to do as an opacity mask. And you'll see the difference. The top one, let's select it. How will we do an immediate clipping mask? If you have it in the test sometime, they're already going to have an image next to it, and they're going to tell you, let's say, to copy and paste it. So I'm going to bring the image, File and Place. And I'm going to bring one of the images, and let's say I'm going to bring the same one over here. No, I'm going to bring the 0043. And I'm just going to go and put it over here and make it a little bit bigger, and that's it. So remember, we can do 2 kinds of masks. We have the one that the vector is on top and the image is kind of below, and you do a clipping, or you can select that, go over here to your tools panel and click draw inside. That's how I use it most of the time. I just use the draw inside, so then I don't care where everything is. But now I'm just going to select this one and I'm going to copy it because I want to leave it for the other one too. And then I'm going to go in and say paste. And look where it's going. It's going directly to the area. So what does it tell you? What is clipping mask is doing? Basically taking the image and putting it in an area, and it's kind of blocking the edges of the area. That's actually what a clipping mask is kind of doing. I can go into the clipping mask and I can click that's the content, which is just the circle. I can make it bigger or smaller. I can also go to the content right now, and if I'm going to go to the opacity and change the opacity, let's say to overlay, doesn't do anything, but multiply, let's say did that. Not bad. So that's an opacity clipping mask. Goes inside any area that you do, any drawing that you do. What is it looking for? One, remember? So either you make a compound or just going to have one object at a time. And I'm going to double click and I have it here. Now I'm going to go to this one. And then I'm going to say make mask. So look what it opened right away. And because I told it not to clip, it fills it with white. When it fills it with white, that's when nothing is concealed, just everything that you have here. I'm going to click on the mask. Remember I copied this image before? Now I'm going to go into the mask and I'm going to say paste. And then I'm going to put it in here. Look what happened. This is an opacity mask. Do you see the difference? The opacity mask basically controls the opacity that you have on your layer. Clipping mask also does it, but clipping mask goes to the area over here that you have, and then you're going in and looking at that. And that's what things that they are going to ask you, kind of like the difference between them. But look what I can do also over here. I can put another thing on top of it, and on top of it like I do over here. But now I'm going to go into my image layer, and I'm going to go back here, and then I'm going to go back here to the area that has the clipping over here. So this is the clipping, and this is the image that goes in the stuff here, and this is the clipping that I have. Now I can go in and put some stuff in it. But let's go to the top one over here, which is the clip group. Do you see the difference also in the layers panel, how it looks? Opacity mask, it will say ellipse or whatever you have, and has dotted lines on it. So basically you see that the dotted line that you have, and if I'm going to select here, depending where I am, it's going to tell you exactly what you have in the mask, and the layers panel transforms into two things. Does that make sense? Then I'm going to go back to this one, and I'm going to click here. That's a clip group. But now I'm going to go into the clip group, and this is the circle. I can add to that an opacity mask too. They're not going to ask you to do that in the test because that's a little bit more advanced, but I can show you. I can go over here to just the ellipse, and I'm going to say make mask, and then I'm going to put over here, and then I'm going to go in here and maybe have another circle and go in and make it black. And look what I just did. It looks like I cut this circle. Did I cut it? Absolutely not. It looks like this. Do you see over here? It looks like I cut the image and everything, but if I select it and hold on the shift key and click on the opacity, it is non-destructive. Do you see that? So basically with a dark circle, I pretended that I cut the mask over here. So sometimes what do I use it for? I use it to cut images when I don't feel like going to Photoshop. What does it mean? I'm going to go in and close this layer and lock it. Not lock it yet, but I'm just going to go back here and show this image over there. Oh, this image, it's still I copied it, so it's okay. I can go and lock it. I'm going to open a new layer, and I'm going to call it opacity again. And now I'm going to go in and create another artboard. And I'm going to go back into layer 1, and I'm going to turn off the image that I have, so I don't want to see it, and lock it. But I'm going to the opacity area. So kind of my artboard. And all what I want to do right now here, just do a paste. So look what I pasted. I just pasted that. Let's say I want to cut it out for weird stuff and put it somewhere on my Illustrator file. So really what happened, if you want to really cut it, you have to really go to Photoshop, because Illustrator doesn't cut pixels. It doesn't do it. But I can do it here as an opacity mask. What does it mean? I'm going to click here and do make mask. I'm going to click on the mask, and look what I'm doing. I'm going to go, let's say, to my curvature tool. And I'm on the mask, and look what I'm doing. So look what I just did. How does it look? It looks like I cut the image into two. That's only, this stuff like this you can do only in Photoshop, to an image. You can do that to a vector in Illustrator. So what did I do? This is what I did. I put in a black drawing on top of it, and if I hold on the Shift key, I basically turn it on and off. Does that make sense? So that's basically the power of opacity mask. What are they going to ask you again? The difference between them? Every now and then they're going to ask you to make an opacity mask. Most of the time it is actually working with clipping, and depending how you're going to do. I'm going to show you some images that I'm going to you, and I'm going to tell you in the class, make this. I'm going to upload it to Canvas, and I'm going to tell you, do this, this, and this with these images. Could they look like a question that you have in the image? That's images that I prepare based on the test. But now I'm going to go back here to the layer, and let's say I'm going to move it here. What do I like to do a lot with the opacity mask? I'm going to go in and open a new layer, lock the other one, and I'm just going to click and type something. And I'm going to type Illustrator. And do select all, and go in and make that to a bigger area, and I'm going to make it like, let's say 72, and I'm going to make it impact because it's kind of big, and maybe I even going to go and make it a little bit bigger. So let's look at that. I'm going to go in and change the color of that to red. Let's do it red, and let me know if you have that. Now I'm going to copy it. Edit and copy. Edit, paste in front. So when you paste in front something, look what is selected, the one I just pasted. Do you see that? And I'm going to change the color on the one I just pasted, and I'm going to make it, let's say, kind of like maybe light green. We'll see if it's going to be the right one. The one that it's light green right now, I'm targeting it, and I'm going to say make mask. And what do you see? Nothing. Why nothing changed? Because the mask is white. Does that make sense? Right? Now, hopefully it makes sense. I'm going to now and click on the mask, and I'm going to a rectangle. I'm going to click and drag a big rectangle, and I might actually go in and make it black. And look what happened if I made a black rectangle. What do you see now below that? The other type. But I want to go to this one, and I'm going to go to effect. There's a lot of effects in Illustrator that we're going to look at that can you start doing it. And I'm going to go into the effect, and then I am going to go into the one that say we're here, let's say in the effect that I have here, and then I am going to go to a nice effect that I think hopefully they didn't take it away. And then, okay, under stylized, you have all the way down, it says something says scribble. The top effect, there are Illustrator effect. The bottom effect are Photoshop effect. You can put it also on the image. But I'm just going to go to Scribble. And this is the Scribble effect. And look what started happening. Something is happening because it's putting the effect on top of the image. And I'm going to go in and there's different kind of effect. Let's go in and just try snarl. Look what happened if I did snarl. What do you see in front of you? I didn't even touch the other area. And I click OK. Why do you see this right now? And that's the power of opacity mask. I'm going to go in and click on the layer. And I have the Illustrator has dotted line. If I turn off the red type below, what do you see in between? That's going to be transparent. Basically, if I hold on the Option key and click, this is what I put in the mask. So what is black doing? Black is concealing what you have on the top, and what is it going to reveal? It will reveal what you have in the bottom that was red. What if I went to this one and just made a mess from it now? I can go to another effect, and let's say I'm going to go to Distort and Transform, and let's say I'm going to go back and make it roughen. And start just clicking and making it kind of crazy a little bit. Try not to break the machine, and I'm going to click OK. Look what I just did. And now I'm going to click over here and go back to my image, and if I zoom into it, look what I just start getting. Does that make sense? So again, black is concealing what's on top of you. It's almost like you're cutting out and you see what's underneath. If there's nothing underneath, it's transparent. White will reveal. Transitions of gray will do transitions. So I can do anything that I want over here. I can also select it and just go in and delete it. And now I'm going to put something else in it. I'm going to put a rectangle. And I'm going to try to make another effect there. But look what I'm doing. I'm not even going to put a rectangle. I'm going to put a star in the mask. And I'm going to put the star and put it like this. And then maybe I want to go into the star and make it kind of a transparent color. So I went into some kind of gradient. And now I'm going to go to Effect, Distort and Transform, and I'm going to say Pucker and Bloat. And I'm going to change some stuff to the star. And deselect. And look what I have over here. If I'm Option clicking here, that's what I have inside. It used to be kind of grayscale. I don't know why they changed it that you have it in color. It should look like grayscale over here, but that's what I have inside the mask. Does that make sense? And that's why look what it's doing. So if I'm going to select that and select it and maybe go back here and just do it black, look what I have now. Do you see how beautiful my image look? It looks like I drew something in it, and it looks like, wow, how did we do it? We just put something black in the text, and what am I revealing? The one underneath it. Does that make sense? So if I'm going to go to the image, and then I'm going to turn off Illustrator, the red one, look what happened. But if I'm going to go below, instead of Illustrator, I'm just going to go and let's say put another rectangle. And I'm going to put the other rectangle below, and then I'm going to put it and make it a different color, let's say orange. Look what happened. The Illustrator, the cutout, shows you what you have underneath. Does that make sense? In my case, I did have actually, and you see that? Now the Illustrator shows the red color. If I change the color of the red text to, let's say, black, what are you going to see? Black. Does that make sense? I want to make sure it is clear, and I want to make sure that the difference between opacity mask and mask, a clipping mask, it is actually really, really clear. And if you have any question, it's a good time to ask right now. Does that make sense so far? Cool. Sometimes there's other stuff in the transparency, and if you click and say show option, there's other stuff to deal with opacity mask, but usually there's nothing with it is happening in the test at all with it. It's other stuff that you're doing with the images, and it's not part of your test. So if we have some time in between, maybe we're going to deal with it, but if not, it's not something part of it. Most of the time, it's going to look like that. And then make opacity mask. Just go in, and now I can make opacity mask. Guess to what? The other stuff that I have. So I can start piling stuff on the area that I have and create a whole thing with the opacity mask that I have. So look what I have here. I have an opacity mask to the first Illustrator, an opacity mask to the other one, and that's how I start seeing stuff like that. Does that make sense? Yes? So you see, 90% of the time, and I'm going to bring some exercise to the class, and I'm going to tell you, do this, do that. I already combined it, because what you do in the test, you're not creating the image. We are creating it in the class to teach you. In the test, what you're getting is, that's it. That's what you get in and create stuff. So you're going to have stuff one on top of each other, and they're going to tell you, create the clipping, create an opacity, change the blending mode, do this, do that to the image that you have. Does that make sense? Great. Any questions? Are you good? Are you good? Good. I'm going to close it. And then we're going to do one more thing that's not so much in the test. It is in the test, but people don't use it as much, and I'll tell you why. It is called the Gradient Mesh tool. And it is a tool that started in Illustrator a few years ago, like maybe 10 years ago, and it was a blast when it came up, because it makes actually thing looks like watercolor. But it is a tool that's not as intuitive, and a lot of people, and it takes a long time to create something beautiful. Something ugly, it's really easy, but something beautiful, it's not. But every now and then, they're going to ask you to create a gradient mesh from an image. So I kind of want to show you, but I'm going to show you what I do now instead of using that, because it's a better solution. But some people still using it. And then if you Google gradient mesh tool with Illustrator, for people that do medical illustration or even product illustration, you're going to see stuff that drawn with gradient mesh that you're not going to believe it is even Illustrator. You're going to think somebody took a picture with it and just did it in Photoshop. So let's look to File and Open. And it's still in week 6, and you have Gradient Mesh tool. And then I want to show you, first of all, open the flower. This is the other one just showing you some kind of project, but let's open just the flower. And that's what I meant. And this is not even the most beautiful one. Zoom into it. How does it look? Isn't it looking like a beautiful flower that may be almost like an image? What is it? It is an Illustrator file. Just do Select All, Command A. And look what you have there. That's what a gradient mesh is all about. So if you're just looking at the layers panel, look what a person who did it was not me. So you don't have to say wow, because I didn't do it, because gradient mesh, I love doing it, but it is a lot of work and I'd rather do something else. But look what you have here. In each layer, look what a person did. He just went into different places, and that's what he has. He took in and he drew in each area, let's say the stem. And if you open the stem, look what you have here in the stem. If I deselect and select one by one, first you draw, then you create the gradient mesh. And look at this, you have tiny little things there and you create. I love this area, look at this. I mean, I'm like, wow. It's like, looks like watercolor. So how do you do stuff like that? Of course, what did they do it in the test for you? In the test, let's do File and New. And we're gonna open 8.5 by 11, one artboard. And in the test, you're gonna get the following. You may get, and we'll do it, let's say you're gonna get an ellipse. And it looks like that. And the ellipse is going to have a certain color already on it. So let's go into our swatch panel and let's look at some color and let's click on it and put on it maybe like green colors over here. I'm just going to make it green. I can also go back here and create another color, or I can bring other colors that I have from the area that I have here, but I made it green. And now they're gonna tell you in the question, create a gradient mesh with this amount of that and this amount of that, which I'm gonna tell you in a minute. And where is it? It's in two places. But if they're gonna tell you number of columns, you have to go from your object menu bar. So the question is, create a gradient mesh. You go here, and they're going to tell you make 4 rows and 4 columns, and the appearance should be to the center and 100% highlight. Click OK. That's the question. That's the answer. If I deselect, look how beautiful it is. It looks like almost like a 3D area that I have there, right? So that's actually what they're going to tell you to do in the test. Not a lot than that. Maybe other stuff a little bit. How do you go and edit that? First of all, one rule. Gradient mesh, once you have a gradient mesh, you cannot put on the same one another gradient mesh. I cannot go in object and say, oh, not working here. It doesn't let you do it. So you can have to draw another thing, to do another one and another one. So let's say if I wanted that to be like an olive and a pimento on it with red, I'm going to have to do another one and another one. But how you are editing it? You have to edit it with your direct selection tool only or the direct lasso tool. You want to have your smart guides on so you can see the mesh. Right? So on and off. If you don't see the mesh, it's kind of hard to work with it. Now, you can go in and look what else disappeared. Remember I had a stroke around it? The stroke goes away. There's no stroke to a gradient mesh. Gone. So now, I'm just going to go and click inside in the middle one. I just did one click. See what happened here? That's what you want to see. Whatever it's clicked and it's filled anchor point, that's the one that are selected. The white area, the white anchor point are not selected. On purpose, we're going to choose a color that doesn't really do a good thing. So I'm just going to go and click on yellow. Look what happened. It clicked on the area that you did and does this. Splash. And meshes it over. Does that make sense? So that's why a lot of time with gradient mesh, you want to work with a lot of complementary colors to create like something like the flower. So the person who did it first maybe start thinking about the good colors, and then he started using the stuff that he has. If I hold on the shift key and add more things, look at this, I'm selecting more and clicking on the same one, deselecting, look what I just did. I just did this area. This is why a lot of time I will go to the lasso tool and I'm going to do stuff like this. Look at that. And look what it's selecting, just the area here. Purposely I'm going to do a different color. And look what I just got here. Does that make sense? And then I can go back in this area and let's say I'm going to do red, and now I got something like that. While you have it also, you can go in with your direct selection tool. Click on an anchor and look what you can do. Push it. Click on this one and push it. So if you're looking at the flower, that's how he created that. You see what he started doing here? He started pushing a little bit the anchors to create a different look, but he did great colors here, and that's why it looks so good. So each little spot here, look at that. If I click on it, I'm kind of basically looking at different colors. Do you see that? And then, believe it or not, if I'm just selecting that with even the regular selection tool and go to the flyout menu and say add selected color, these are the color he worked with. You see how many? Tiny, tiny, tiny. That's why I told you it's kind of like, for me, it's kind of a nightmare, because if you don't like to work and be kind of tedious, that's the gradient mesh. So that's going to go in and just going to be the question. So I'm going to delete it. What if you have a different kind of image and then you're going to do that and they say create gradient mesh, and this one they're going to tell you 6 and the columns 8, and they're going to say to the edge, but the highlight is going to be only 80. And that's the answer. That's it. And that's the gradient mesh that I have on this one right now. Every now and then you can also do a gradient mesh manually. What does it mean? I can go to my ellipse tool, and then I don't feel like now doing create a gradient mesh, so I can go to the gradient mesh tool on my toolbar, and that says mesh tool, and the parentheses it says U. That's the shortcut. And I'm going to click on it and just click. And look what I start doing. Everything that I click, what can I do? I can add meshes. I could also go back to this one and add meshes with the tool. So after you're doing, you can add meshes to what you have. Now I can go back to the one all the way here and decide that I'm going to my lasso tool, and then I'm going to go in and make it with a lighter, and you see what I just did? And I'm going to go back here, and maybe even I'm going to put white here. So you see what I just did? I just created stuff here, and now I'm going to do green, and I'm basically creating a little mess here, but that's actually with the gradient mesh tool. So there is a little exercise that I have there, which we're not doing usually in the test, because it's not what happened, because they're going to bring you. So what I do a lot of time, I tell people in other classes to, let's say, open this stuff here, and let's say if I wanted to create colors just from it, and then do a gradient mesh. So what would I have to do first? Probably going to have to trace this little guy. But I'm going to show you a little trick. If I select it, and I'm just going to go to image trace, and then I'm going to go back here to image trace and make that to, let's say, not so many color, but I'm going to make it for now, let's say 16 colors. Once I made it 16 colors, I'm going to expand it. And then when I expand it, I can go back here and say add select used colors, and you see I got all the reds over here. Now I can trace the apple and start doing a gradient mesh. That's a lot of time what I do. So if you're gonna go in the final, say file and open, next to it you have a PDF that has a gradient mesh in it. So in a minute you'll see how it opens, and look how many colors I have there. A lot of colors. So look what I have over here. In the first artboard, I have just the image, and I created colors from it. In the second one, look what I have here. I do have gradient meshes on each one. But what did I do there in the gradient meshes? If you want to check it out, it's probably locked, but I'm going to go back here and then look at that. This is what I have here. And if I click on it over here, you can see I did 1 and 2 and 3. I traced it first, and then I made a gradient mesh to it from it, and then I duplicated it and changed the colors, and then basically I traced it like that. You can see here the trace. This is actually the line art that I traced it one by one, And when you trace the apple, see, that's how I traced it. Now I actually can add to it a gradient mesh if I want, and that's why I kind of did this project. See, I'm going to click here, and now if I want to have a green apple that has a lot of fun colors, I might go back here and start putting it different kind of images. Does that make sense? Not going to happen in the test. In the test, they're going to give you an object or circle or something and say, create a gradient mesh with 8 columns, 8 rows, and depending how the other one. It's not an appearance. You cannot save it as a style. It's a drawing. That's what it is. So what do I do if I need to create and pretend that I have a gradient mesh and I don't feel like doing gradient mesh, right? So I'm going to undo this one, right? And then let's say I'm just going to go. Let's say I want to do something and I'm really lazy. I will go to my gradient tool. And then over here, and I'm going to go back here and I can go to the gradient panel also. But over here, what I have, this is the gradient type. So I have a linear gradient. Okay, that's a regular gradient that we did. I do have a radial gradient. But now I'm going to go into my freeform gradient. So if I go to the freeform gradient, look what starts happening. I'm going to go to my swatch panel and bring it out. You cannot save this gradient, but you can do magic with it. I can go back here too, and then it's great to go actually to the gradient panel right now just to see it. So I'm going to go to window and I'm going to bring the gradient panel, then I'm going to see that. So the first thing I can do, I can click on this. It just gives you a random stuff. I'm going to say I want that to be this green, and I wanted it to be kind of like a little bit bigger. And I want to have another one over here, and I'm going to make a different kind of green, and then make that maybe kind of like a little smaller a little bit. And then I'm going to click this one, and I'm going to make a dark green. And I'm going to click on the white, and I'm really going to make it kind of something dark. If I deselect, it is going to look like you did a mesh. Do you see that? So the freeform gradient, they might not ask you questions about it. That's my answer to a gradient mesh, and I do it in so many things now. The only drawback, you can save it as a gradient. It's not savable. Why? Because I did mine, you did yours, so it's not, you cannot save it. Right? What else can you do? First of all, you can edit the gradient that you have over here. So I can go and edit everything. I can also go and do it with lines. So I can click and click and click and click, and what do I do? And then each area that I did here, I'm going to go back here and create something. And then just go back here, oops, and do that. So basically, every area, and I can go and make it uglier or not uglier, and look at that. So I can go in and fix it at any time, and it will look like I maybe created a gradient mesh. What is it? It is a free-form gradient. Really cool. You also have it on Illustrator on the iPad. And there's no limitations to it except that you cannot save it as an appearance, which you can do it to other gradient. Does that make sense? So the gradient mesh tool, they're still going to ask you about it, but my answer in my regular workflow is this one. Start playing with it. You can do any, I mean, it's so cool that you're going to do stuff and you're not going to know how to stop. Sometimes I just click, 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 and say, ooh, I want another one, and I want another one, and all kind of stuff that you have here. And this is basically what you have in the area that you have. Does that make sense? Really cool. You just don't have the mesh. But that's the gradient mesh. And I'm going to close all. I think sooner or later, they might actually come up with an idea not to ask questions about it. But they still like it because there's a lot of people still use the gradient mesh tool. Like the guy who does the flower, he did one time a camera, and I thought actually he took a picture of a camera and put it in there. But and then there is a third party grid to do, and some people are kind of like, it's a set of people that really like to do like intense drawing for stuff like that. But now let's look at the next thing, and that's going to be in week 7. File and open. Going to week 7. I have working with colors, I have symbol, patterns, and blend. And it looks like a lot of stuff, but they are so easy to work with, and we can look at the stuff that we have. So the first thing we're going to go is working with color. We're going to go to color guide, and we're going to double click on it, and then we're going to click on symmetry AI. And look what happened in this one, and look what I have here. I have an image that it is a symmetry that I created and did all kind of stuff. Then I duplicated it, and then all of a sudden you see it with different kind of colors. And how did I do it, and is it working kind of like, was it hard to do or not? Absolutely, it was very easy to do that. So what I want you to do here is basically click on the last one that we have, and just delete that. And we're going to work just with this one. We're going to look at our swatch panel, and we're going to go back here and look what I have over here. I already have some kind of groups already. So if I want to choose other groups, I can have other groups of colors. Because when you are going to apply color to something, you want to work a lot of time with groups and play with stuff. So look what I have here. And then maybe I'm going to go in here. Let's just make it clean and say select all unused. And you can see here, I'm going to delete it because the colors were based on the one we just deleted. So these are the colors that I have. And let's say I don't want all of them. So I'm going to go in and select that and delete. Let's pretend that we are going to create our own color that we have here. First of all, I can select one of them, and I'm going to go back here and say add selected colors. And that's the colors that I have here. And I'm going to select one and hold down the shift key and select the last one. And I'm going to make from it a group, and I can call it selected color or selected artwork. That's one, and I'm going to call it, I don't know, winter, because maybe it looks like a winter color. And then that's kind of like the colors that I have, and then it changed a little bit the colors that I have because I selected it, so I shouldn't have done that. And I'm going to go back here. Selected that. I'm going to say add selected colors. I'm going to click OK, and now I'm going to click on this, guys. And then I'm going to go to the group, and I'm going to say color group winter. That's it. And I have a color group named winter. But what if you want to prepare color groups ahead of time? So you can make colors, but let's go to the colors, and let's go to art history. And look what I have in art history. I have ancients, Baroque, Impressionism, Middle Ages, Middle Age, pop art, and let's go to Renaissance. And I'm going to go to Renaissance, and I'm going to click the first two only. And then I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to click on pop art and select any random beautiful color on pop art. And then go in, and let's say they all look kind of the same, but I'm going to go into Baroque, and I'm going to click on one of them. And it's enough. Let's say I have a bunch of other colors that I have, and it's all good. Now, I want to go. This is the original, so I don't want to change it, but I'm going to go into the left one. And I'm going to go in and just select the left one. And now, what is it kind of like change colors? You do have a panel in Photoshop, in Illustrator, that if you go to Window and you're going to go in, it's called Color Guide. And that's actually a color guide that you create from it, different kind of also colors. But right now, these are the colors that I have, but I'm going to select that. From here, you can go to the bottom and it says Edit or Apply Colors. Do you see that? And then a dialog box will open, and then it might be, depending which version I'm using, it might be open bigger or smaller. So you can say Open Advanced Color Artwork dialog box on launch. It's always going to be the advanced one that you have. And this is what you have over here. It shows you the colors that you have in your image. And then you're going to tell you, do you want to assign color? And maybe I'm going to assign to it the pop art number 6. Look what happened here. It assigned to it right away the color. That's one way of doing it. If you don't like it, you can reset it. I clicked OK. Deselect. So this is how fast you can go and do stuff. Now I'm going to go and select the one next to it. You can also go up to your recolor artwork in your control. And now when you do that, that's how it shows in the beginning, and it will show up as a small kind of area, and you want to click maybe on the advanced to see the entire thing that you have. I always say Open Advanced Recolor Artwork on a dialog launch, so I have it the advanced one. Now I'm going to go to Edit. Look what you have in the Edit color. You have all the colors that map into this color. If you link it and you click and drag around, look what starts happening to your image. Do you see what's happening? Do you see my image is changing? And then basically I can go back here and make a color group from it. And click OK, and look what happened. While I did it, I created a new color group. Does that make sense? So depending what I'm going to tell you, they might tell you to change it to a certain color group, or a color group that you have it, or they might ask you to make a color group from the color guide. So I'm going to go into the color guide, and this one is basically the base color, but I'm going to select one, hold on the shift key, and look what I'm doing. Selecting all the yellows and clicking over here and then adding it to the swatch panel. And look what I just made. I just made something from it that I can colorize. But so let's say you have it, and I'm selecting that, and they're going to tell you colorize the image to color group 1 and click OK. And look what happened. Now I colorize it to group 1. Does that make sense? So this gives you an option to colorize logos and colorize all kind of stuff in a really easy way. What else can you do with it also? I can go in, let's say, to this one, and I'm going to click here, and then I want to go back here, and I want to go into this area over here, and it says none, limit the colors, and I'm going to say limit it to natural flower kind of area that you have. So it is another kind of color panel that you have, and look at that. So it already limits it to another color panel that I just opened right now. And then I can make a group from it, and then I click OK. So you can colorize stuff, you can start looking at it to do some more advanced stuff. In the end of the day, what you're getting here, you're getting a lot of new colors that you're having it, and you can make it into global colors and start actually doing it as fast as you can. So you'll see here, let's say if I open the other one next to it, which is basically all what I did here, I traced that. I traced kind of like Snickers. And then I selected, let's say, this one, and now I want to recolorize it. So I traced it with something, but maybe I want to limit it to just these colors. Do you see over here? And then maybe I want to go into the preset and I'm going to say 2 colors. And then I want to take it from a certain process library and click OK, and that's what I'm going to get here. And if I'm going to get the folder, look what I got over here. I just got the process colors here, and this is the colors that I have. Does that make sense? So it's a really easy way to start colorizing the stuff that you have and doing it. And they're going to ask you simple stuff. They wanted you to go in to the color guide and maybe to want you to be one with this one, because they might telling you make one based on the complementary, make one based on the left complement, make one based on the triad, and things like this. You see, there are 23 variation over them, and they call it harmony rules. So they might ask you, what is it? And you're going to say harmony rules. They might ask you how many harmony rules, and you know it's 23 harmony rules that you have. And they might ask you, where is the harmony rules in Illustrator? And it is in the color guide panel. So these are the little questions you might get, and maybe something to do with it. Does that make sense? I love using it. I really play with it a lot. And what did I do with this one? I basically traced it. It was a Nike that I downloaded it from the internet, and I traced it, and I started playing with the colors. So even if I go back here, and let's say I want to eliminate all that, and then I'm going to select all unused, it doesn't select a lot of them, because the other, what is it? It's used over here. Do you see that? It's basically this one is used, and this one is used, and that's where you have all the colors that you have here. Does that make sense? So I'm going to close that. And let's move at the next stuff that we have. And then it's file and open. And that's really, really cool. And then this one is going to be working with blends. One of actually my favorites that I like to do is working with blends. And then the reason I really like it, and it's not, I don't know why it's not in a lot of books also. Blends also are not appearance. It's a blend at a time. So what does it do? By default, it looks like a gradient when you open it. But it's basically blending one color with the other color, one image with another image that you have. Only vector. You cannot blend 2 Photoshop files. Not going to happen. I'm going to double click on it. And then you can see that I have demo over here. And this is just a demo. We don't need to open it. But I have here blend practice test. I just did something that I'm going to look maybe like the test. And let's open that. And you can see that I have it in different artboards. And we're going to do kind of one by one. So let's say the first, and it's all in one layer, which is okay. The first question is going to be blend the 2 rectangle into 6 steps, and that's it. So you're going to select one. You're going to hold on the Option key and select the other one. Where would you go? Object, blend, and options, because you don't know the options yet. And over here you have options. You have smooth colors, specify steps, and specify distance. What did they ask you to do? Specify steps, and they ask you to do it 6. Click OK. Nothing is happening. Go into Object and Blend and Make. And you made the blend. That's it. It's already a blend. You answered the question. Now let's look at the layers panel. And I want you to show you how a blend look. And I'm going to go and do it a bigger panel. I'm going to do large and click OK. And then I'm going to go in and watch it over here and look at that. So when you go in and have a blend, it will say blend. It looks like a group, and next to it is a dark circle that tells you there's an effect there. But if you uncollapse the area, look what you have here. You do have the spine, and you do have 1 and 2. You don't see the other steps. You just see the blend by default. Could be another question, and they're going to tell you, select the top rectangle and change it to yellow. So how would you select it? Either you're going to go back here and select it from the layers panel, or go to the direct selection tool and click on the top one and change that, let's say, to yellow. Look what happened. And they're going to tell you select the bottom one and change that to green. And look what you did to your blend. What happened? It will reblending it. So this is what you can do with blend, right? I can also go into the top one and maybe I'm going to make it orangey. Now look what I can do. I can go to the direct selection tool, click at the edge of the anchor, and look what I'm doing. Look what happened to the blend now. Because it is kind of together, whatever you're going to do to the top one or the bottom one, it's going to do it to all of them. I'm going to go to the bottom one here, and I'm just going to do that, and look what happened here. Does that make sense? But it's still a blend. So if I'm going to go and select it and go to Object and Blend Options, now I'm going to see a preview. And then I ask you, change it to 10. And click OK, and that's going to be your answer. Does that make sense? So they might give you a blend already, and they might ask you to change it to another blend. What happened if you change the look of the spine? Look at that. Look what happened to my blend. I have a spine there. It's still something that you can work with. Circle doesn't have a spine, but rectangle and other will have a spine. I can go to the pen tool and click on the spine, and look at that. Look what I can do to my blend. Does that make sense? It's all going to be cool until I'm going to go to Object and Blend, and I'm going to say Expand. I can release it. Release it is telling you you're going to start doing something new. So I'm going to go Object and Blend Option, and now I'm going to go in, I'm going to say Smooth Color and click OK, and then Blend and Make. And look at that. That's Smooth Colors. But I'm going to Command Z it, and let's say I'm going to leave it because I don't want to expand Smooth Colors because it's going to be 255 object. But you can go Object and Blend and Expand. Look what happened when you expanded the blend. It's over here, it's in a group. And each one is individual now. This one is one, and this one is one, and you can start working one by one. So when you're expanding the blend, you're just creating something completely different. The reason I didn't want to expand the Smooth Colors, because that's going to go in and do it to 255 colors, and that's going to be a lot of images right now for me. So they're going to ask you, or they might have something that looks like that. And they're going to tell you, make it, select the 1 and 2 and 3, and make that as Smooth Colors. So sometime you can do it with the Blend tool. You have a Blend tool, and it's over here. And if you click on the word W, you can see that's the Blend tool. Okay, you can see that's the blend tool. But now I can double click on the blend tool and I can decide which options I want to work with. Smooth color, specify steps, or specify distance. Now I can go to smooth color and click OK. And I didn't select them yet. With the blend tool, you can just click on one, click on the other one, and click on the other one. And you see what happened? It will just do it. Why sometimes I don't use it? Sometimes it's dangerous. Because if the stuff one on top of each other, let's say I'm talking to you and I'm saying, and blend it to the other one. See what I just did? It blends everything. The blend tool, everything it catches, it will blend. So sometimes people like more to go from the object menu bar. But if you know what you're doing, you okay? You can do there. It's the same idea. That could be another blend. But in this case, maybe they wanted to do specified distance. And then I'm going to go in and that's the default. Maybe that's okay. From here to here, and that's the distance. Didn't do a lot of distance, but that's okay. Can I still change colors? Absolutely. I can go to that, and I can go and change color. I can go to this one, and then I can go in and change the color. So I'm going to go back and change color. I'm selecting the wrong one. I have to select that. And now I'm going to go in and change the color maybe to yellow, and look at that. So everything that you do, you can change the color. You can even click on it and do that. So look what I just did. I just went to the direct selection tool and I just made a mess with my blend. But I can still do it. And that's going to look something that you're going to do when you create blends in Illustrator. Does that make sense? So the questions are going to be really simple. They're going to ask you to blend something, to change the blend, but also they're going to ask you to do something different. And look at that. I'm going to go back here and delete this, and let's do 2 circles. I'm going to do one ellipse with one color, and I'm going to go in and do another. I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to select that and duplicate and put it here and make it into another color. And then you may have something like that, and then you're going to see a blend already. What does it mean? You're going to see when you open, let's say it says specify steps, and I'm going to do only 3 steps and click OK from here to here. That's it. You open something and it's going to look like that. But then when you open it, you're going to have something else there. And if I'm going to go into my curvature tool, you're going to have a curve over here that's going to look like that. And then I'm going to say no fill, and I'm going to make a stroke. And then you're going to open that, and they're going to tell you replace the spine of the current blend. So how would you do that? You're going to go and select the current blend. You're going to hold on the shift key and select the new drawing that you have there. You're going to go to object and blend and replace spine. Do you see that? And now look what happened. That's the answer. So blend, if you have any other spine, you can replace it. So if it's done on one, you're going to replace it to the other one. Does that make sense? Also, blend do not have to be with the same stuff. Let's say I'm going to make a rectangle, and it's going to be this color, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to make a star, and I'm going to go back here and I'm going to make that to another color, or I can just do that. I can go back here, double click, specify steps, and I'm going to make it 10, and I'm going to go from 1 to 1, and look what happened. It will create little shapes too from that. So each one, it starts with and it's going. When you expand it, you're gonna do different kind of shapes, and that's a good way to make different shapes if you don't know which shapes to use. Does that make sense? So you want to start looking and investigating and see the object of menu bar for that. You have release, blend option, expand, replace spine, reverse spine, and reverse front and back. See, I reversed it. I released it. I expanded it, but you always have this one. And then I didn't select that, but if I go back here and select that, and I'm just going to go back here, and then maybe I'm going to make it 12. It might just do it 12, or I might make it 4. I'm going to look at the preview and I'm going to see that. So after doing it, you can see align to the page and align to the path. You don't see any changes so much, and look at that. That's only 4 steps. Always you have I call him the boss, you know, the top and the bottom, and not the inside. You don't see it. It's almost like when you do animation, it's the step of the animation that you don't see unless you go in and change that. So if I'm going to go back here just to this one with the direct selection tool and change the color, it will change the color for me. Does that make sense? So just for fun, I wanted you to look at this, guys. Look how cool stuff you can make with blends. And I have a lot of demos for you. If you want to, I'll show you just to look at it if you want to start doing different kind of blends. But look at that. I'm going to go in, and I just did one, and I'm going to select the other one. And I'm going to go to Object and Blend option, and I'm going to make specify steps, and I'm going to make it 50. And then I'm going to go into blend and blend option, and blend and make. And look what happened. Because I have this line, it kind of looks like I created something like looks like a different kind of image, but I can go into the spine of the first one and then change it. Look at that. Now I'm going to go in and I'm creating like maybe a base for a lamp or something. I don't even know what I'm doing, but I can go in and change the color of this one to a different color. Does that make sense? So look at that. So you can really go in and start blending stuff one inside each other and all kind of stuff. You even can blend, believe it or not, you can blend type. But guess what you have to do with it? You have to create outline. But if you want to do something kind of looking kind of crazy with that, you can just do stuff with blend and then blend one to the other and just go in and work with it. So the blend tool in general is really a cool tool to create stuff. And then when you're looking at it, let's say over here, let's say this is kind of, let's say I'm going to make a blend that's going to look like maybe a gradient. I'm just going to go into my polygon tool and look what I can do. Something really fun. I'm going to go to the polygon and I'm going to make it dark red. Now I am going to go in and make it straight, and then while I have it, I'm going to go to my scale tool and double click on the scale tool and make it 10% smaller, and then I'm going to say copy. So the new one is the same one, and I'm going to make it, let's say, yellow. Now I'm going to deselect, and I'm going to double click on the blend tool, and I'm going to say smooth colors, and I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to say from here to here. Look what happened. By default, it might look like a radial gradient, right? And they might try to trick you and they say, where do you save the blend tool? As a file. You don't save it in your, or what's the difference between gradient and a blend? Gradient, you save it in your swatch panel. This one not. How would you know if you don't click? If you click on it, look what you see. That's going to give you also the clue. Question mark. Lots of colors. I don't know which one. I can't do anything for you. I cannot go in and save it in my swatch panel. It's not going to happen. Does that make sense? So basically it is kind of a gradient, but it is looking like, it's a blend that looks like a gradient. If I go back to this inside, and then I'm going to go and move it, and then I'm going to go back. It's too small, so I'm going to zoom into it, and then I'm going to go and move that. Look what I just did. Or I'm going to move it here. I moved the gradient, the top one, I just actually changed the look for it, and now it's looking a little bit different. I can even go to the direct selection tool and just do that, and now it's really going to change the look of the blend. Does that make sense? So they don't have to be the same shapes. They don't have to be the same color. You can do different color, different shape. The one that kills sometime your blend is the stroke, and sometimes it doesn't really look great with stroke. So when you have time, just look at the samples that I have here for you, and then in here it says blend path for globe or a new gear. So if I click on this one, look what I have here. This is actually a blend with different kind of circles went in there and have inside different color. It's not really a sphere. So if you're looking at your layers panel, and I'm looking at layer 2, this is one blend, and this is the other blend. If I turn the other one, this is the one that I have here. If I double click on it, that's my specified steps. It was 6. If I change it to 8, you see it's going to look different. And now if I click this one a little bit different, it's just going to look. So it's different kind of blend of different circles with just the top frame. And you can start putting it one on top of each other and create your blend with it. Does that make sense? They're not going to ask you to do stuff like that because that takes more time. But they're going to ask you, and they're going to put for you some stuff to blend. A lot of time what they ask you is to edit the blend also, or edit the gradient. So what happens is they're going to tell you, take this blend and make that from specified steps to another one that you have here. It's very hard sometimes to go, let's say this one. Let's say if I change the smooth colors. Yeah, it did it. A lot of time it's going to be hard to do it, but they're going to tell you to change it from one place to another. Does that make sense? Any questions?
Could you show the spine replace?
Yes.
I didn't really see that.
So I'm just going to go back here to one of them here, and let's say I'm going to go to the first one, and I'm going to zoom in. So let's say you have like a simple blend that you're doing, and you don't even know what you're going to do, but you just created, let's say, a circle, and you made it into a color. Let's even go a different one. Let's say you're going to make a little polygon here, and you do it over here, and we'll do a different color. And then I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to say specified steps, and I'm going to make it only, let's say, 8. And then I'm going to click from one to another one. So it's like, let's say it's a boring blend, right? And you want the blend to look a little bit different around something. So you can create any spine. What does it mean? I can even create a circle. I can go into the circle. I'm going to select the circle and select the blend. Object, blend, replace spine. You see what happened? It went. The only thing with circles, it's never going to close. It's never, no matter how many steps, it always looks like that. So if you want to do something that has a lot of circles around like this and different stuff, that's a brush. That's not a blend. But anywhere that I have, so maybe I'm going to, and I can make some of you completely weird looking. So let's say I'm going to go back here, and then I'm going to deselect, even if I go back here and I'm going to go and say hello. And it's going to be something not logical, because I'm going to go and make that, hold on the shift key, and make it really, really huge. And then I'm going to go back to type, and create outline. And then I'm going to select one and select the other one. And now I'm going to go to object and blend, and you see the replace spine is not going to do on this one because it is an outline, but I'm going to go back here and it's still kind of in a group, so it doesn't. But if I want to have one by one, I think it should kind of replace the spine. Or maybe it doesn't like it because maybe it's too complicated for it. No, it doesn't do it to type. It will do it to anything else that you want to do and do a different kind of spine. So I'm just going to go back here and then do something a little bit more interesting maybe. And then deselect. Select the two of them. And then replace spine. And see, it's just going to go back here and replace the spine. Oops, did I do it? Okay, and now it's here. Does that make sense? It just replaces the spine that you're doing back and forth to the other one that you have. So the blend tool is really cool. I love it. I use a lot of stuff with the blend tool. I create kind of 4 3D that looks like 3D, but they're not really 3D. And by the way, in 2022, the 3D effect really changed, but you're gonna get only the 3D that did not change yet. I don't think the one that changed ever gonna go into the test, because it takes forever to work with it.
I've seen videos of that. It looks so cool.
It's very cool, but it's very, you need a good machine for that. And they're afraid that in the middle of the test, it's not gonna work. Did you see video of people working with it, right? It's really great. Like this computer that I have, this one, and one I have at home, works perfect with it because it's bigger and has a lot of RAM. This one, as soon as I go to it, it says to me, hello, but I'm not working with you. So the next thing we're gonna look is, we're gonna open, and then we're gonna go to week 7, and then we are gonna go in and click on pattern. And this one, look what you have here. We're gonna go in and create a pattern in Illustrator. So look what you have over here. These guys are actually Photoshop files. But this one, I just want you to open the Flower AI just to show you. Look what I have over here. If I'm going to my swatch panel, look what I have over here. This is a pattern that made and then was filled inside the area that you have. So basically, what can you do with pattern? You have a pattern maker in Illustrator, and you can make a pattern from everything that is Photoshop and also Illustrator. Everything Photoshop is not going to be so good because it's going to be depending how you're going to work with it, because if you want to enlarge it, it's going to be maybe pixelated. But everything vector, it's going to be absolutely awesome. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to leave it here, but I'm going to delete everything that I have here, and I'm going to delete this one. I'm just going to leave the swatch panel over here, but I might go in and bring some other colors. But I'm going to do File and Place. And from here, we'll decide what do we want to go in and make a effect, a pattern. So I'm going to go in to Green Leaf Medium PSD. And I'm going to go back here and just drag and put it very small on the screen. Click and drag. And I'm going to duplicate it, holding down the Option key. Now I want to make a pattern just from the one that is a Photoshop file. I'm going to click on it and drag it to my swatch panel. And look what I have. It's already there. If that was a linked file, it will tell you unlink it. But now, I want to go in now and then kind of like figure out how I'm going to work with it. So I'm going to double click on the thumbnail of the new pattern swatch 1. Double click. And this is what you are getting. And this is the pattern maker. The top one over here tells you this is the pattern tile. Exactly the size of the tile. They might ask you to change the size of the tile to a different one. Let's say 2 by 2. So look at that. Look at the pattern all of a sudden. That changes. Does that make sense? They can ask you also go into the grid and decide which kind of pattern you are doing. Brick by row, or brick by column, or the offset of it, and how to go and do that. And then they're going to want you to save it as a copy, because they gave you one and they wanted you to change it. Or actually in this one, they gave you one and they wanted just to make a pattern. So we did a pattern with cross, but now we're changing it. So we're going to say save as a copy. And then I'm going to call it leaves, or leaf. And it's going to tell you the new pattern has been added to the swatch panel. Any additional changes made while in the pattern editing mode will be applied to the original pattern, not to the copy. So what does it mean? It's going to take the original, take it away. So guess what you see now? You're going to say cancel. And look at this. The new one is coming here. It's kind of weird. I don't know why they did it. Now I'm going to go into my circle and look what I have. This is the new one that I just did. This is the old one from before. Does that make sense? But these guys are pixel pattern, which is okay if you don't need to change a lot of the sizes of it. But look what happened now. I'm going to go in to my scale tool, and I'm going to double click on the scale tool, and I'm going to look at the preview. I'm going to leave it kind of like, let's say 100 for now, that it's going to be like before. But now look what I'm going to do. I'm going to say uniform, and I'm going to make it 50. And if I click on the preview, it's going to make it smaller. But I don't want to make the pattern smaller. I mean the whole image smaller. I just want to make the pattern. So look what happened. I don't want to transfer the object. I'm going to transfer only the pattern. Do you see what's going on there? I have a small pattern there. And I click OK. It's not changing the look of the original. The original is still there. Does that make sense? It just changed it while you're here. So if you want to change the original, you double click again, and then you select the entire area, and look at that. Now look at this. I'm making it into a small pattern. That's going to change it. Does that make sense? But now I'm going to say, oh, I changed it to a little one. Maybe I want to go in and have a circle somewhere. And in the circle, I want to have a kind of pink color. Kind of ugly, but okay. I just made that. And then I'm just going to go back here. And then while I have it here, maybe I don't want to have it pink. I just want to have it like that. And I have it green. And I might even duplicate it and put it in different places. And then I'm going to save as a copy, and I'm going to say new leaves. And then I'm going to say OK and cancel, and look what happened. I have a new kind of pattern. It is still, part of it is vector and part of it is pixel. Does that make sense? Now, what else can you do? Can you do that? You can trace it and make a pattern from it. Or you can build a pattern from anything that you want. What does it mean? Let's do one. I'm just going to go back and bring another color. Let's say I'm going to go in and bring earth tone, and I'm just going to bring some other colors over here, so it's not going to be as boring. And now I'm just going to go in, let's say, to my ellipse tool, and I'm just going to go in and look at that. It still wants to fill it with that, so I'm going to make it kind of red. And now I'm just going to go in and rotate it. And then I might go to my reflect tool and option click to next to it and say I want to reflect it vertical and click copy. I have two kind of things like this, and I'm going to make one and I'm just going to put them next to each other. And then I'm going to go into a smaller ellipse all the way up here, and I'm going to go and make it blue. I'm just going to put it here. And I'm going to select it. That's all. I just made just some stuff. And I'm going to click and drag and put it here. That's it. And deselect. So what if they're asking you to change the name of this pattern? If you double click on it to change the name, it's going to open the pattern maker. So what you need to do is click on the show list view. And then double click and call that flowers, because that's what I wanted you to make it. And that's how you change the name of the pattern. I'm going to go back here, because as soon as I double click and I think I'm making from it a pattern with a different name, I'm going to double click. Look at that now. That's kind of cool. So look what I'm going to do. I'm going to select one. I didn't group it. I should have grouped it. I can even group it now. And then I'm going to make it a little smaller. Now I'm going to duplicate it and put one here and make that a little smaller. Even while I have it here, I can click on recolor artwork, and then I can go into the edit, and it's only 2 colors, but I can just go in and change that to different colors. Does that make sense? And then make that into a new group of 2 colors. Look at my things that I have here. It just looks a little bit different. I can deselect, and I can decide that I want to go and put a tiny circle here and make it kind of maybe a different color from before. So I'm going to go back here and maybe make it some kind of dark orange, and maybe even bring it here to the area that I have. And all what I want to do now is save it as a copy, and then we're going to say lots of flowers. Click OK, click cancel, and look what I have. So now I'm going to look at that. I'm going to go to a rectangle, and that's my original. I'm going to go this one, that's the new one. It is a seamless pattern. So you can do whatever, you can mask stuff with it, you can do whatever you want and put it in. When you have a pattern in Illustrator also, if I go and move it around, I can also go back here and double click on the rotate. And when I double click on the rotate, I'm going to say I just want to rotate the patterns, not the object. And look what I have here. So I can do that. There's also a little shortcut for it. If you are on the rotate tool and you hold down the tilde on your keyboard and move it, look what happens. The tilde is on top of the tab. So you can make that. If you are on the scale tool and you click on the tilde, you can make it smaller or bigger. See that? So you can just do it with a shortcut while you have. you can put a pattern inside text. It doesn't have to be outlined. I can go and say hello. I can select all, and then I can make it impact and make it a lot bigger. And then while I have it here, I'm going to go in and put this one here. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but I have it inside the area that I have. I can go back here and add to it some kind of a stroke, and the hello is going to be inside the pattern. It's a pattern. You don't have to mask it. If it's a gradient, remember, either create outline or mask it. But when you have a pattern inside an area, I can just go in and double click. I'm going to say I don't want to transform the object, but I want to transform the pattern and make it 20. And look what you have right now. I have something that doesn't look so cool for hello, but maybe if you're starting designing, let's say, all kind of sheets and linen or pajamas, all kind of stuff that you want, you can put the pattern directly into it, and it is compatible. It's not compatible to the pattern that you make in Photoshop. They are different. It's not compatible to anything on InDesign, because InDesign does not have any kind of pattern that you have. Does that make sense? So what are they going to be in the test? They might go back here and you have something in the test that's going to look like that. And I'm just going to go in and pull it out from my panel that I have. And I think I took away my swatch panel. It's all the way down here. Where is my swatch panel? Somewhere in down somewhere. And this is my swatch panel. So let's say I still have the area that I have here. So you might have something like that they're going to tell you create a pattern. Click on it, put it in there, and that's it. You created a pattern. They're going to ask you to name it. You make it into a list and you name the pattern. They're going to want you to go in and change stuff to the pattern. Double click on it. And they're going to tell you what to do with it. They're going to tell you, go into the pattern tile option and change the size of the pattern tile option to 3 and 2. And then create done. And that's it. You just created that and you made it done. And now if I'm going to go back here, you see it changed it. If they wanted to save it as a copy, save it as a copy. But they're going to tell you how to work with it. You can also name it directly here now and call it a different name. You can also change it a different ways. And now I'm going to go save it as a copy. And then I'm going to call it New Flowers. Because if you name it with the same name, they're going to tell you it's happening. And then I'm going to click here and look at that. Now I'm going to go in and select the new one that I have. And I have stuff that I have a new one here. And I think it's this one. Is it this one? Or that one? Or this one? Oh, I'm on the stroke. It is basically, am I going to my swatch? It's probably the new one. That's it. You can also have a pattern to your stroke as well. It's ugly usually, but you can do that. Does that make sense? So this is going to be really, really important when we're going to look later into brushes. We're going to start next week working with brushes, or in 2 weeks from now, and I'm going to show you how to create brushes, which is really easy breezy. You're going to take stuff from a pattern and create a brush from it. And you're going to have some limitation. Before we just change everything, before the other class coming, just want to show you some other limitation over here. And let's say I'm going to go back here to my gradient. And I'm going to go in and bring a gradient because I don't feel like looking for it. Let's say color harmonies, and I'm going to go and do that. And I'm going to do and do this. And I'm going to do and do that. Now I'm just going to go back here and go and do that. So you see here, now I have that, and it is with my gradient that I have here. And I'm going to go back here, and I have this one with the pattern that I have over here. So I can also go in and have some gradient now for my patterns that I have. Does that make sense? It's going to be some limitation later when you create a brush, but right away you have that, and it is not a beautiful one, but it is, that's your pattern that you have. Does that make sense? Any questions? Most of the time they're asking you to apply it or change and edit it or change the name. That's it for the pattern that you have. So next week I'm going to do it online, and then what we are going to do is, if I'm looking at the area that I have, I'm going to go back here, and then it is going to be week 8, and it is going to go back here, and we're going to work with appearance and a little bit 3D, but the old 3D that we have. It's going to be really easy just to work with it, and I might add to it some kind of the symbols, which we didn't do yet. And then in week 9, what we have to do is we have to look at brushes. If we have time, I'm going to show perspective, not in the test at all, not even a touch of it, but I just put it in there instead in case we want to go and work with it. And in week 10, we're going to do a practice test, Q&A, and I'm going to bring other images to the practice test that you can start kind of work with it. Different kind of images to go in and work with. Does that make sense? Cool. So I'm going to go in